Have you ever walked past someone, seen their job, and thought you knew their whole story? What if the quiet person cleaning the floors held a secret that could shatter every assumption you ever made? Today we're taking you inside Franklin High in Cedar Creek, Georgia, where a routine Thursday afternoon turned into an unforgettable moment. A sarcastic teacher, a complex calculus problem, and a humble janitor named Sam Jenkins were about to collide, sparking a chain reaction that would awaken an entire school and reveal the extraordinary brilliance hidden in plain sight. Get ready to discover that sometimes the most powerful lessons come from the most unexpected places. The afternoon sun, usually a welcome guest, felt like a spotlight that Thursday in Franklin High School, casting long indifferent shadows across the worn linoleum floors of Cedar Creek, Georgia. It was fourth period, the kind of hour where the hands on the wall clock seemed to creep slower than a snail uphill, and the air hummed with the barely contained restlessness of teenagers dreaming of freedom. Here in Mr. Harrison's calculus class, that feeling was amplified. Now Mr. Harrison wasn't exactly a villain, but he certainly wasn't a hero in the eyes of his students. He was a veteran teacher, sharp-tongued, impatient, and quicker with a sarcastic jab than a word of encouragement. He'd seen countless faces come and go, and frankly, he seemed a little tired of them all. His reputation preceded him, tough, demanding, and convinced that most kids simply weren't cut out for the complexities of advanced math. He'd pace the aisles, tapping a ruler against his palm, his gaze sweeping over the slumped shoulders and distracted stares. Anyone who thinks calculus is just addition and subtraction, he'd drone, is in for a rude awakening. Some of you, he'd pause, letting his eyes linger, are already wide awake in the wrong dream. The whiteboard behind him was a battlefield of equations, derivatives, integrals, functions twisting and turning like mathematical serpents. Today's monster was a particularly nasty multivariable problem, designed, it seemed, to humble even the brightest minds. Mr. Harrison had spent the last 15 minutes scribbling furiously, muttering to himself before finally sighing, running a hand through his thinning hair. "All right, class," he grumbled, turning around. "Who fancies a shot at unraveling this beast? Anyone feeling enlightened today?" A sea of blank stares met his gaze. Not one hand dared to rise. This was a common scene. Just then, a faint squeak echoed from the hallway. It was the rhythmically steady sound of a mop, a sound so familiar it was practically part of the school's background hum. Mr. Samuel "Sam" Jenkins, a black man of 55, was nearby, tending to the gleaming floors outside the classroom. Sam was as much a fixture of Franklin High as the bell schedule. He wore his forest green uniform, faded from countless washes, but always meticulously clean, with S. Jenkins Custodial stitched above the pocket. He moved with a quiet, deliberate grace, a man seemingly lost in his own thoughts, content in his solitude. He was the guy who cleaned up the shadow that kept the school running. Most students and even teachers barely registered his presence, offering only a polite nod in passing, if anything at all. He was, to put it bluntly, invisible. Mr. Harrison, perhaps fueled by a flash of frustration or a sudden desire for a cheap laugh, paused mid-sentence. A half-smile, sharp and slightly cruel, played on his lips as he glanced at the door. Then, without warning, he turned to the class and pointed towards the hallway. "Well, well, look who's here, Mr. Harrison," announced, his voice carrying just enough to reach the hallway. "Mr. Jenkins, tell me you always look like you've got something on your mind out there. Think you can solve this one?" He tapped the board with the back of his marker like a game show host issuing a challenge. A wave of nervous laughter rippled through the classroom. It wasn't roaring, confident laughter, but the kind that makes you shift uncomfortably in your seat because you're not sure if it's okay to laugh. The air crackled with a strange mix of embarrassment and amusement. Sam, still holding his mop, just looked into the room. He didn't blink, didn't flinch. His expression remained unreadable. He had been challenged, perhaps even mocked, in front of an entire classroom of teenagers. The moment hung heavy, charged with an unspoken tension. Then slowly, deliberately, Sam stepped into the room. The mop leaned against the wall with a soft thud. A few students sat up straighter. A collective gasp, almost audible. Some thought he was about to say something smart back and leave. Maybe he'd crack a joke, or just walk away with a shrug, dismissing the teacher's ridicule. But he didn't. Instead, Sam walked to the front of the room, his movements slow, steady, and entirely devoid of showmanship. He looked at the complex equation on the whiteboard, then calmly turned to Mr. Harrison. "You mind?" he asked, gesturing to the board with a slight tilt of his head. His voice was low, even betraying no emotion. Mr. Harrison raised his brows, a smirk still playing on his lips. "Be my guest," he scoffed, waving a hand dismissively. He expected a fumbled attempt, a comical failure. He expected to confirm his own prejudices. A few phones silently slid out from backpacks poised to record what everyone assumed would be a moment of awkward humiliation. One girl whispered, "Is he serious?" But nobody stopped Sam. He picked up the marker, looked at the equation, and paused. Not out of hesitation, but like someone reading a familiar map, thinking deeply. He squinted just slightly, then began to write. No showmanship, no flair. Just deliberate strokes, one line after another. The room fell into an eerie stillness, broken only by the soft scratch of the marker on the whiteboard and the creak of a chair as someone leaned forward. Mr. Harrison crossed his arms, watching closely. His expression didn't change, but his jaw tightened almost imperceptibly. Sam began to break down the steps out loud, his voice low and patient. "See this? Here's a chain rule problem. But the trick is recognizing the inner function first. Once you isolate, that it becomes a lot cleaner." He moved like he'd done this 1,000 times before. Not just the problem, but the teaching. His tone wasn't showy or smug. He explained things simply clearly, like he'd spent more time teaching than mopping floors. He was calm, focused, and utterly in his element. When he finished, he capped the marker and stepped back. The board was filled with precise, well-organized work. He turned to Mr. Harrison, then to the class. "That's one way to do it," he said, his voice as unhurried as ever. For a moment, no one moved. A junior in the back whispered, "He got it right." Mr. Harrison didn't say a word, not immediately. His mouth opened slightly, but nothing came out. The silence grew louder than any joke he could have made. Sam nodded politely, a small knowing glint in his eye, and walked back to the door. He picked up his mop. No applause, no boast, just that quiet confidence, like he hadn't just turned the room upside down. As Sam reached for his mop, disappearing from view, it felt like the class had been yanked out of a dream and dropped into something real. The kind of moment that doesn't belong in a high school classroom. The kind of moment that makes you rethink everything you thought you knew. Because what had just happened wasn't just a janitor solving a math problem. It was an entire school, an entire way of thinking about, to be shocked to its core. Sam Jenkins, our quiet custodian, simply nodded, picked up his mop, and walked out the door, the familiar squeak of his well-worn shoes echoing down the hall as if nothing extraordinary had happened. No bow, no triumphant glance, just that quiet confidence that spoke volumes. But what he'd just done had yanked the entire fourth-period calculus class out of their restless stupor and dropped them into something intensely real. For a full 10 seconds, the room remained in stunned silence. Then a junior named Maria Sanchez, third row, already editing the shaky phone footage she'd captured, whispered, "Yo, he's solving it in his head." That's when the dam broke. Phones buzzed to life across the classroom. In the hallways between periods, the buzz became a roar. "Did you see Mr. Jenkins?" Harrison's face man looked like someone unplugged him. "Where'd he learn that stuff? I thought he just cleaned floors." Within the hour, Maria's raw, unpolished video had exploded on TikTok. Then, Instagram quickly migrating to the Cedar Creek High Confessions page. The caption went viral. "Our janitor just smoked the calculus teacher." Some laughed, some stared in disbelief, but the buzz kept growing, infecting every corner of Franklin High. It was messy, it was real, and it was undeniable. In the teacher's lounge, the quiet hum of conversation gave way to hushed, astonished tones. "You're telling me he did a full derivative chain problem in his head?" asked Ms. Albright, the physics teacher, pausing mid-bite into her sandwich. "Didn't use notes, didn't even pause," muttered Mr. Peterson, the English teacher. It was like muscle memory. Mr. Harrison was at the corner table pretending to grade papers, his usual sarcastic wit conspicuously absent. He said nothing, but the stiffness in his shoulders, the way his jaw worked, spoke volumes of his discomfort. He was used to being the smartest man in the room, especially when it came to math. Now, a man he'd barely acknowledged, a man he'd openly cruelly underestimated, had quietly outshone him. This is a common pitfall we all fall into, isn't it? We look at someone's job title, their uniform, their quiet demeanor, and we immediately draw conclusions. We create mental boxes for people, and anyone outside that box becomes invisible. How many extraordinary minds, how many unseen geniuses are we overlooking every single day, simply because they don't fit our narrow definitions of success or intelligence? How many Sam Jenkinses are there out there? Their brilliance quietly tucked away, waiting for a moment to shine, or perhaps never getting that chance at all. This incident quickly reached the ears of Principal Anya Sharma. A leader known for her calm demeanor and keen eye for student potential, she'd been at Franklin High for 5 years. She was the one who finally spoke up in the lounge. "He's been here 7 years, she mused aloud, her gaze sweeping over the baffled teachers. No one ever mentioned he had an academic background. People shook their heads. Nobody really knew much about Sam. He came in early, left late. Floors were always clean, light bulbs never burned out for more than a day. The man worked in silence. But now, he wasn't just the man behind the mop. Out in the hallway, a group of students had started waiting outside the janitor's closet, not to complain about a spill or ask for a broom. They just wanted to talk to him. A 14-year-old named Marcus, clutching his geometry book like a lifeline, finally gathered the courage. "Do you tutor Mr. Jenkins?" Marcus asked, his voice barely a whisper. Sam blinked, his quiet chuckle a gentle surprise. "I haven't in a long time," he said. "You should—" Marcus insisted, his eyes wide with a mixture of awe and desperation. That was cool." Sam chuckled again, a genuine warm sound this time. It wasn't dismissive, just surprised. This was the first time in years, maybe decades, that anyone had seen past the uniform. This was the first time someone had genuinely asked him to share something beyond his custodial duties. It was a crack, a tiny fracture in the wall of anonymity he'd built around himself, and through it, a sliver of light began to shine. This simple question from a young, curious mind was about to set in motion a profound shift, not just in the school, but in Sam's own long-dormant sense of purpose. The ripple effect was just beginning, and soon Sam's past, carefully guarded for so long, would begin to unfold, revealing the true cost of unfulfilled dreams and the enduring power of knowledge. The very next afternoon, a polite but firm request landed at Sam's janitor's closet door. Principal Anya Sharma wished to see him in her office. Sam arrived still in his forest green uniform, a little damp from scrubbing under the cafeteria sinks. He removed his cap as he stepped inside, a quiet gesture of ingrained respect. Principal Sharma, a woman known for her calm demeanor and sharp intellect, leaned forward in her chair, hands clasped. "Mr. Jenkins," she began, her voice soft but direct. "Can I ask you something?" Sam nodded, his eyes steady. "Do you have a background in education? Or perhaps engineering?" Sam hesitated. He looked down for a second, like someone dusting off an old cherished part of himself that hadn't been visited in years. The silence stretched thick with unspoken stories. Then he spoke, his voice almost a whisper. "I went to Purdue," he said quietly. "Mechanical engineering. Full ride." Principal Sharma leaned back, her eyebrows rising in genuine surprise. "Are you serious?" She murmured, the question laced with awe. And for the first time in a long, long while, Sam Jenkins told a story that wasn't about cleaning solutions or broken light bulbs. He told the story of his past, a past that had been carefully locked away, gathering dust, much like the old textbooks he still kept hidden. He had grown up in Memphis, Tennessee, a smart kid always. Not just book smart, but hands-on brilliant. He loved how things worked. Motors, pulleys, anything he could take apart and meticulously put back together. While other kids played ball, Sam would be in the garage, tinkering with broken lawnmowers, his small fingers instinctively understanding the intricate dance of gears and wires. His mother Estelle raised him and his two sisters on her own, working tireless overtime at a garment factory. Despite her exhaustion, she still found time to read to them every single night. She believed in education like it was the only way out, the only true key to unlock a world that often tried to keep doors shut. Books first always, she used to say, her voice firm. The world will try to shut the door, but if you bring your own key, they can't stop you. Lamar earned that key and then some. Valedictorian of his high school class, a state science fair winner for a self-built hydraulic system, and then the scholarship, a full ride to Purdue, one of the nation's top engineering schools. Freshman year, he was already tutoring classmates, his mind sharp, his explanations clear. Professors saw his name on the attendance sheet and paid attention, seeing a future leader and innovator. The dream was within his grasp, tangible and bright. But sophomore year, a call came that changed everything. His mother had collapsed at work. Doctors said it was late-stage cancer discovered too late. By the time Sam rushed to the hospital, she could barely stay awake. "I can take care of it," she whispered, her voice frail. "Don't come home." He didn't listen. He took a semester off, then another. He picked up jobs. Warehouse work, night shifts at a grocery store, anything to pay the mounting medical bills. Classes faded into the background. So did the dream. By the time his mother passed, things were scattered. He had no home to return to, no money to finish his degree, and no guidance counselor calling to ask why he hadn't come back. "I kept thinking I'd get back to school," Sam told Principal Sharma, his gaze distant. But one thing turned into another. Life doesn't wait for you. The principal sat in silence, absorbing the weight of his words. His story wasn't dramatic in the way of movies, but it was profoundly real. The kind of life you never hear unless you ask. Back at home, Sam kept his transcripts in a worn cardboard box under his bed, along with a faded Purdue sweatshirt, an old engineering calculator, and a crumpled photo of him and his mom on orientation day. He never touched it, but he never threw it away. Now, all of it was being dragged into the light again. He remembered a particularly difficult turning point. It was late November, years after his mother's passing. A man named Frank Booker, who owned a flooring company in Atlanta, had offered Sam steady work. "You're sharp," Frank had told him. "Don't waste your time pushing brooms. I'll train you myself." Sam had hope again, a real shot. But the day before he was supposed to start, his youngest sister Tasha was caught in a brutal fight at school. A stupid argument that escalated and she'd broken someone's nose. They threatened to expel her. Sam had to be there. No one else would show up for her. So he missed his first day at the flooring job. Frank gave the spot to someone else, and that was it. A door that could have opened slammed shut. He stopped chasing dreams after that. He started chasing stability. Years blurred together, town to town, job to job. He never had a record, never got into trouble, just survived quietly. By the time he arrived in Cedar Creek in his early 40s, he wasn't looking for a new beginning, just a steady paycheck. The school district offered benefits. Summers were quiet. He took the janitor position without blinking. He liked it in his own way. Predictable, clean work. Students left him alone. Teachers smiled politely. He didn't expect friendship or connection. He didn't need it. He kept his head down, cleaned up messes, and disappeared before the last bell rang. But numbers never left him. Sometimes when he passed a math class, he'd glance at the board, see a formula, and finish it in his head. It was like muscle memory, a part of him that stayed sharp even when everything else got buried under routine. He'd go home, make himself a quiet dinner. Grilled fish, brown rice, maybe some carrots, and flip through an old engineering book he kept tucked behind the cereal boxes just to see if he still had it. He always did. He just never had a reason to show it. Until Mr. Harrison called him out that day. Life doesn't always bend to plans, especially not the kind built on hope alone. Sam's story was a powerful testament to that truth. Yet as he finished speaking, a quiet understanding settled in Principal Sharma's office. His journey wasn't a failure, but a testament to profound sacrifice and enduring strength. And the knowledge that precious key his mother spoke of, the one that never faded, was finally about to unlock a new door for him and for an entire school. The echoes of his brilliant past were about to ignite a quiet revolution. Even during the long years of mopping floors and changing light bulbs, the numbers never truly left Sam Jenkins. Sometimes, as he passed a math class, he'd glance at the whiteboard, see a complex formula, and quietly, almost instinctively, finish it in his head. It was like muscle memory, a part of him that stayed sharp, a hidden well of knowledge that remained untouched but ever present, even when everything else got buried under the quiet routine of his custodial life. He'd go home, make himself a simple, quiet dinner, grilled fish, brown rice, maybe some carrots, and flip through an old dog-eared engineering book he kept tucked behind the cereal boxes just to see if he still had it. He always did. He just never had a reason to show it. Until that Thursday afternoon, when Mr. Harrison, in his callous humor, offered him a challenge. The very next day, Principal Sharma formally approached Sam. She offered him a modest stipend, a trial run for an after-school tutoring program. "It's not about replacing your current role," she'd assured him, "just adding to it. Sharing what you clearly still have." Sam looked down at his hands, calloused, clean, and worn. He hesitated not out of doubt in his ability, but out of a lifetime of humility. He hadn't taught in a long time, not formally. But then he thought about Marcus, the young boy with the geometry book, and the quiet hunger in his eyes. He thought about the potential he saw often overlooked. He accepted, not for the money, not for the title, but because, as he put it simply, it felt right. Thus began the Jenkins sessions. No loud announcements, no fancy flyers. Just word of mouth, a quiet ripple through the school. They met in the library in a cozy corner by the large windows after the final bell. It started small, a circle of 3, then 5, then 8 students. Sam never stood at the front like a traditional teacher. He sat beside them, conversing with them, his voice low and patient. Notebooks open, heads bent, they'd listen as Sam explained concepts with a clarity no one expected but everyone respected. He wouldn't just give answers. He'd walk them through the problem step by step, line by line, asking questions before answering theirs, making them believe they could find the answers themselves. It wasn't loud, it wasn't flashy, but something truly meaningful was happening. Consider Isaiah, a freshman who'd nearly failed algebra last semester. He used to panic at the sight of a quadratic equation. But with Sam, he'd sit there slowly, patiently, until a spark of understanding ignited in his eyes. "Mr. Jenkins," he'd exclaim, "I actually get this." Then there was Tasha, a bright but cynical junior who used to declare her hatred for math. She started leading mini-sessions on weekends for her cousins, using Sam's notes, finding a new confidence in her own understanding. Sam connected the abstract world of numbers to their everyday lives, making the complex seem beautifully simple. It was teaching beyond the curriculum, a lesson in how genuine connection and belief can unlock potential far beyond what textbooks can. Meanwhile, the ripples reached the teacher's lounge. Mr. Harrison, for one, had gone quiet. Too quiet. Students noticed, teachers noticed. Something about being shown up in front of your class by a man you never gave a second thought to, it rattled him. He didn't lash out, but his tone got shorter, his patience thinner. When someone mentioned Sam in the lounge, he'd abruptly change the subject. He wasn't used to being outshined, especially not by someone who'd been utterly invisible to him until now. It was a classic case of ego versus enlightenment, and Mr. Harrison's ego was putting up a fierce fight. Principal Sharma, ever perceptive, didn't let it slide. She brought Mr. Harrison into her office one morning. "I know it stung, Robert," she said, using his first name, "but Mr. Jenkins didn't embarrass you. He inspired them." Mr. Harrison shifted in his seat. "He's not qualified," he muttered, clinging to his old paradigm. "He's educated, Robert, more than we realized. And more importantly, he's reaching kids in a way none of us have." Mr. Harrison opened his mouth, then closed it. There was nothing to say, not really. The truth, quietly delivered, was undeniable. Slowly, almost imperceptibly, Mr. Harrison began to change. He still didn't overtly acknowledge Sam, but he started dropping by the library during the Jenkins sessions. He'd watch from a distance at first arms, crossed his expression unreadable. Then one afternoon, he did something no one expected. He walked into the library, approached Sam's huddle of students and asked, "You mind if I sit in?" Sam looked up, his expression unwavering. He nodded toward the chair, a slight smirk playing on his lips. "Long as you don't mind learning something." The students chuckled just enough to lighten the tension. Mr. Harrison smirked too, and for once it wasn't mean. They sat together that day, said little, but it was a start. The edge in Mr. Harrison's voice began to dull. Something in him had softened. He even began to quietly offer an extra problem or two, occasionally offering words of encouragement to the kids. The quiet revolution was underway. Sam wasn't interested in titles or formal recognition. He was simply showing up for them. The kids. The ones who reminded him of the bright-eyed boy he used to be. Every Tuesday and Thursday, right after the final bell, that corner of the library, filled with chatter questions, scribbled notes, and wide eyes. Sam walked students through math problems they once feared, not because he had all the answers, but because he made them believe they could find those answers themselves. That's what truly stuck. And this quiet, profound impact was about to spread far beyond the walls of Franklin High. The video didn't just make its way around Franklin High, it made its way out. It started small, a local student page, reposting it with the caption, "When your janitor turns out to be smarter than your teacher." Then it landed on a regional education forum. By the weekend, it had crossed state lines. People online couldn't believe it. They weren't mocking Sam. They were in awe. "Man broke it down cleaner than my college professor," read one comment. "Someone get this man a classroom and a chalkboard, not a mop," read another. Proof you never know someone's story. By Monday morning, Sam had no idea any of this was happening. He didn't follow social media. He still had a flip phone. When he arrived at work, the first thing he did was fix a jammed paper towel dispenser in the girls' bathroom, just like he always did on Mondays. But something felt different. Teachers paused their conversations when he walked past. Students nodded not out of obligation, but with a strange kind of respect. A few even smiled, like they were seeing him for the first time. "Hey, Mr. Jenkins," one girl called as he passed the library. "You're kind of famous now." Sam chuckled softly. "Don't believe everything you read." But when he turned the corner, Marcus, the young man with the geometry book, was waiting there with two other students. One had a calculus book in his hands, open to a problem highlighted in pink. "Would you mind going through this with us?" Marcus asked. Sam looked around confused. "You got a free period." Marcus grinned. "We made time." And just like that, in the middle of a hallway lined with lockers and science fair posters, Sam sat down on the floor with three teenagers and walked them through a multivariable equation step by step, line by line. Not talking at them, but talking with them. It wasn't loud, wasn't flashy, but something meaningful was happening. Meanwhile, back in Principal Sharma's office, she was on the phone with someone from the local school board. "Yes, that's correct, Samuel Jenkins. Been with us 7 years. No, he's not faculty, he's a custodian." She paused, listening. "Well, I wouldn't call it unorthodox. I'd call it overlooked." That afternoon, Principal Sharma called Sam back into her office. She offered him a seat, but Sam remained standing. "I've got a request from the board," the principal said, her voice warm. "They want to know if you'd be interested in running an after-school tutoring program. Small group voluntary, just a trial run." Sam didn't answer right away. "You'd be paid, of course," Principal Sharma added. "It's not about replacing your current role, just adding to it. Sharing what you clearly still have." Sam looked down at his hands, calloused, clean worn. He had spent a lifetime chasing stability after his dreams had crumbled. Now, a formal offer, a chance to reclaim a part of his past, was being laid out. But the truth was, his heart wasn't in reclaiming a title. "I haven't taught in a long time," he said, his voice quiet. "You haven't stopped knowing." Principal Sharma replied, her gaze steady. Sam looked up. There was no pressure in her voice, just a simple, profound invitation. "I'll think about it," he said. That night, he pulled the old cardboard box out from under his bed. the one with the Purdue sweatshirt that transcripts the orientation photo. He hadn't touched it in years. He laid everything out on the table. The paper had yellowed a little, the edges curled, but the words were still there. That was the thing about knowledge. It didn't fade. It waited. He didn't need to go viral. He didn't care about the views or the comments. But knowing he could still make a difference, that tugged at something deep inside him. The more attention Sam received, the more the school began to shift. It started with the kids. They were the first to change. The ones who used to pass him in the hall without a second glance now stopped to say good morning. A few even asked for help on homework between classes. By the end of the second week, a small circle of students had unofficially formed what they called Jenkins sessions. They'd meet in the library after school, notebooks open, heads bent, listening as Sam explained concepts with a clarity no one expected but everyone respected. Then came the teachers. Most were supportive. Ms. Albright from physics was the first to swing by the library and watch him work with the students. "You've got a gift," she said softly, "and I don't mean just with numbers." But not everyone was thrilled. Mr. Harrison hadn't said a word about Sam since the day it all happened. In the teacher's lounge, he acted as if nothing had changed, but the bitterness was clear in his silences. He spoke in clipped sentences. He never looked Sam in the eye. He never mentioned calculus. When a parent-teacher meeting brought up Sam's growing influence with the students, Mr. Harrison said, "It's good they're interested in math. Let's just make sure we don't blur the line between instruction and inspiration." It sounded polite on the surface, but everyone heard the biting tone beneath it. Principal Sharma didn't let it slide. She brought Mr. Harrison into her office one morning and laid it out plainly. "I know it stung," she said, "but Sam didn't embarrass you. He inspired them." Mr. Harrison shifted in his seat. "He's not qualified," he insisted, still clinging to the old rules. "He's educated," Principal Sharma countered, her voice firm. "More than we realized, and more importantly, he's reaching kids in a way none of us have." Mr. Harrison opened his mouth, then closed it. There was nothing to say, not really. Meanwhile, Sam kept to his routine. He didn't ask for a title, didn't want special treatment. But when the principal offered him a modest stipend to keep the tutoring sessions going, he accepted, not for the money, but because it felt right. He started carrying a small binder with him. Inside were pages of problems, blank worksheets, notes he'd written by hand. During breaks, he'd sit in the back corner of the cafeteria and scribble down formulas from memory, occasionally nodding at a passing student who'd call out, "Hey, Mr. J." One afternoon, Maria, the student who filmed the original clip, stopped him by the vending machines. "Did you ever want to be a teacher?" she asked. Sam took a second before answering. "I wanted to build things. Teach later, maybe. But life had different ideas." "Well," she said, handing him a fresh mechanical pencil, "I think you're doing both now." He smiled. "Thank you." But behind all this good, there was tension brewing. Some parents had started calling the school. Most were supportive, but one anonymous complaint hit the board. Is it appropriate for a janitor to tutor students in a school setting? Is he certified? Has he been background checked for instruction? Principal Sharma handled it swiftly. "He's an employee of the district," she stated. "He's done nothing wrong. And if concern was truly the motive, they'd have spoken with me directly." She never told Sam about the complaint. Still, Sam could feel something in the air, not resentment, but resistance, like some folks didn't know how to place him now that he didn't fit neatly into the background. Then one afternoon, Mr. Harrison did something no one expected. He walked into the library during one of Sam's tutoring sessions, quietly watched from a distance, as Sam explained integrals to a group of 4 students. After about 10 minutes, he stepped forward. "You mind if I sit in?" Mr. Harrison asked. Sam looked up. His expression didn't change. He nodded toward the chair. "Long as you don't mind learning something." The students laughed, just enough to lighten the moment. Mr. Harrison smirked, and for once, it wasn't mean. They sat together that day, said little, but it was a start. The edge in his voice had dulled. Something in him had truly softened. It wasn't about proving anything anymore for Sam Jenkins. Standing at the whiteboard in the library with students gathered around it was never about redemption or revenge. He wasn't trying to impress anyone. He wasn't trying to be remembered. He was just showing up for them. The kids, the ones who reminded him of the boy he used to be. Every Tuesday and Thursday, right after the final bell, that corner of the library filled with chatter questions, scribbled notes, and wide eyes as Sam walked students through math problems they once feared. Not because he had all the answers, but because he made them believe they could find those answers themselves. That's what stuck. There was Isaiah the freshman who nearly failed algebra last semester, now solving quadratic equations without looking panicked. And Tasha, who used to hate math, now leading mini-sessions on weekends for her cousins using Sam's notes. He never stood at the front like a traditional teacher. He sat beside them, talked with them, asked them questions before answering theirs. And gradually, more teachers started dropping by, not to supervise, just to learn how he was doing it. Ms. Albright asked if she could adopt some of his explanations for her class. Coach Rivera asked if Sam would help set up a summer prep group for incoming freshmen. Even Mr. Harrison, hesitant, prideful Mr. Harrison, stopped by regularly, not every day, but often enough. He'd quietly offer an extra problem or two, and eventually began offering words of encouragement to the kids. One day during a tutoring session, Mr. Harrison lingered after the students left. "You know," he said, looking at the board, "I used to think this job made me important. The teaching gave me power." Sam didn't interrupt. "But you've reminded me what it's really about, showing up, making it count." Sam just nodded. "We all lose our way sometimes." He didn't hold grudges. He didn't need to. A month later, Principal Sharma called him in again. There was a proposal on the table to formalize his sessions into an elective class next semester. Not for credit, but enrichment, a bridge between students and their own confidence. "We'll have to jump through some hoops," Principal Sharma warned, "but if you're willing—" Sam shook his head gently. "I appreciate it," he said, "but I don't need the title. I'd rather keep it simple. Let the kids come because they want to, not because it's on a schedule." Principal Sharma nodded. "Then we'll support you however we can." Word spread beyond the school district. A local reporter stopped by to interview him. Sam kept it short, no dramatic story, no self-promotion. "I'm just showing them what they already have inside," he said. "Sometimes it takes a little time to see it." In the spring, Franklin High hosted its annual student showcase. There were science projects, art displays, choir performances, and in one corner of the gym, a booth titled Jenkins's Table. It displayed student-written reflections on math life and confidence. Dozens of students had written about how Sam helped them see more in themselves, not because he gave them answers, but because he listened and believed. By the end of the night, people weren't asking, "Is he the janitor?" anymore. They were saying, "That's Mr. Jenkins." He didn't wear a suit. He didn't give a speech. He stood by the table, smiled, and thanked the students who came by. This was his stage. This was his true work. This was his legacy unfolding. Later that evening, back in the quiet sanctuary of his small apartment, Sam pulled the old cardboard box out from under his bed. The one with the faded Purdue sweatshirt, the yellowed transcripts, the crinkled orientation photo of him and his mother Estelle. He hadn't touched it in years, the memories packed away like relics of a life unlived. He laid everything out on the table. The paper had curled slightly at the edges, but the words, the grades, the dreams were still there. That was the thing about knowledge. It didn't fade. It waited. He picked up the Purdue sweatshirt, feeling the worn fabric between his fingers. He didn't put it on. He didn't need to. Instead, with a gentle, almost reverent motion, he folded it neatly. Then he placed it not back in the old forgotten box, but into a new clear storage bin. And beside it, with a soft rustle of paper, he placed a folder. Not just any folder, but one bursting with student thank you notes. Hastily scribbled messages, earnest drawings, simple. "Thanks, Mr. Jenkins." That meant more to him than any diploma. In that quiet moment, a profound realization settled over him. Legacy, he understood, isn't about titles. It's not about degrees hanging on a wall or the fame of a viral video. It's about what you leave behind in others. It's about the belief you instill, the confidence you spark, the unseen shift you bring to someone else's world. He didn't need to finish school to teach. He didn't need a degree to lead. He just needed to show up every day to care and to share the knowledge that had always burned bright within him. From that day forward, the humble rhythm of Sam Jenkins's life continued, yet it was fundamentally changed. He still cleaned floors, still fixed light bulbs. But now his walk through the hallways held a different purpose. His quiet nod was met with eager smiles and respectful greetings. The kids still waited for him, not just in the library, but sometimes just to say hello, to share a small triumph, to ask a quick question. Mr. Harrison continued to drop by the Jenkins sessions, no longer just observing, but sometimes even humbly asking Sam for a quick thought on a tricky problem. Their relationship, once built on disdain, had found a new foundation of mutual respect. Sam never sought the spotlight, never needed applause. His reward was in Isaiah's confident grin as he conquered a quadratic equation, in Tasha's newfound passion for math, in the quiet understanding that passed between him and students who just weeks ago saw him as little more than a shadow. He understood now that his journey, with all its unexpected twists and heart-wrenching turns, had led him precisely where he was meant to be. He was a janitor, yes, but he was also a teacher, a mentor, and a quiet, unassuming force for change. And that's exactly what he planned to keep doing. This is a testament to the fact that sometimes the biggest minds are hiding in the quietest places. And often, the most profound lessons come from those you least expect. It's a reminder to open your eyes, to look past the uniforms and titles, to truly listen to the unspoken stories around you. Because you never know whose unseen brilliance might be waiting to illuminate your world or someone else's. If Sam's story resonated with you, if it reminded you of someone you've overlooked or someone who believed in you when no one else did, like this video, subscribe to our channel, and share this story. Let's champion the unseen heroes among us and help them unlock their own quiet confidence.